In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But what if I told you that the first chapters of Genesis actually contain two conflicting creation accounts? Yes, you heard that right. Two stories, one book, and they're not the same. Why are there two different accounts of creation in the Bible? Is there something hidden beneath the surface of these seemingly contradictory narratives? What truths have been buried for centuries that could completely shift our understanding of God, humanity, and the world we live in? In this video, we're going to uncover the mystery behind Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. You'll discover how these two stories not only portray vastly different versions of creation, but also reveal two distinct views of God. From the grand cosmic creation of Genesis 1, where God speaks the universe into existence, to the intimate, hands-on creation in Genesis 2, where God forms Adam from the dust and breathes life into him. We'll explore the deeper meaning behind these differences. As we dive into these ancient texts, you will understand the theological implications of two creation stories, and why both were preserved in the Bible. We'll explore the significance of the names of God used in each account. Elohim in Genesis 1 and Yahweh, Elohim, in Genesis 2, each one providing a unique perspective on God's nature. So, what if these two creation accounts aren't contradictions, but rather a divine conversation, showing us different aspects of the Creator? Let's uncover the layers hidden in these texts and discover what they really mean for us today. Make sure to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to join the journey of uncovering divine mysteries. Two different creation accounts. In the book of Genesis, we find two very different accounts of creation. Genesis 1 presents the majestic and orderly creation of the world, while Genesis 2 paints a more intimate, personal picture of God's creative work. These two stories of creation may seem to contradict one another, yet they offer us powerful insights into the nature of God, the world, and humanity's place in it. Genesis 1 takes us through a structured process. In 6 days, God creates everything, from light to dark, from land to sky, from animals to humans. The focus here is on divine authority and transcendence. God speaks, and things come into existence. It is a grand cosmic event, showing God as all-powerful and all-knowing. This account emphasizes the order and harmony of creation. Light is separated from darkness, the waters from the dry land, and everything happens in a precise and organized manner. On the 6th day, humanity is created in God's image, male and female, equally reflecting the divine. Now compare that with Genesis chapter 2, where the tone and the imagery shift dramatically. Here, God is not just commanding from afar, he is involved, he is present. The creation story begins with a barren earth. No plants, no rain, no human life. God shapes Adam from the dust of the earth, breathes life into him, and places him in a garden to work it and take care of it. This creation account focuses on the personal and relational nature of God. He forms Adam with his hands, not from a distant command, but from intimate, loving interaction. And then, as God sees Adam's loneliness, he creates Eve from Adam's rib, making her a companion, a helper, not just an afterthought, but a vital partner in the plan of creation. The difference in these two accounts of creation speaks volumes about the relationship God desires with humanity. In Genesis chapter 1, we see God as the transcendent creator, establishing the universe with divine power and purpose. In Genesis chapter 2, we see God as Emmanuel, God with us, close and personal, interacting with his creation in ways that remind us of his tender care and concern. These two perspectives are not in conflict, they complement each other. The divine transcendence of Genesis 1 gives us a sense of awe and wonder, while the intimacy of Genesis 2 reminds us that we are known and loved by God in ways that go beyond creation itself. Genesis 1 teaches us that God is sovereign and powerful, while Genesis 2 shows us that God is loving and present. As we reflect on these two stories, we learn that both views of God are necessary for us to truly understand who He is. God is not only the creator of the universe, but also the tender Father who shapes us and walks with us in the garden of life. In the midst of our busy, chaotic world, it's important to remember that God's love is personal and real, as close as the breath we take. But these differences in Genesis 1 and 2 also point to something deeper, the purpose of humanity in the grand narrative of creation. In Genesis 1, we are created to rule over the earth, to be caretakers of creation, to reflect God's glory and power. We are part of a vast, orderly universe, and we are entrusted with its care. Yet, in Genesis 2, we are reminded that we are not just rulers of the earth, but caretakers of each other. Humanity is designed to live in community, to relate deeply with one another, and to reflect the image of God in our relationships. It's in Genesis 2 that we see the idea of companionship, of love, of mutual support. And it is here that we see God's ideal for human relationships. The difference in names for God. One of the most striking aspects of the two creation accounts is the difference in how God is named. In Genesis chapter 1, God is referred to as Elohim, a plural name that signifies God's power and majesty. Elohim speaks creation into being, commanding light to shine and the waters to be separated. This name is strong, authoritative, and majestic, fitting for the God who rules the cosmos with supreme power. Elohim is the creator of the universe, the one who commands the very fabric of existence. But in Genesis 2, the name changes. Here God is called Yahweh, Elohim. Yahweh is God's personal name, the name He reveals to His people when He makes a covenant with them. It is the name He gives to Moses at the burning bush when He says, "I am who I am." Yahweh is the God who enters into relationship with His people. He is not just the creator, but the covenant-keeping God, the one who walks with His people, who listens to their cries, and who responds with love and grace. This shift in names is not a coincidence. It signals a change in how God is interacting with His creation. In Genesis 1, Elohim is the creator, distant and powerful, while in Genesis 2, Yahweh Elohim is the God who draws near, who forms Adam with His own hands and breathes life into him. In Genesis chapter 1, God's greatness is on full display as He speaks the universe into existence. In Genesis 2, God's love and tenderness are revealed as He shapes humanity with His hands and breathes life into us. The name Elohim highlights God's majesty, while Yahweh emphasizes His personal relationship with His creation. The use of Elohim in Genesis chapter 1 speaks to the cosmic, universal nature of God, the God who created the heavens and the earth. He is the powerful, commanding force behind all of creation. This name shows us that God is beyond us, above us, yet in control of everything. But Yahweh Elohim in Genesis 2 speaks to the intimacy and love of God, the God who created us with His own hands, the God who desires to walk with us, talk with us, and relate to us on a personal level. It is Yahweh Elohim who forms Adam, breathes life into him, and creates Eve to be his companion. As we reflect on this distinction between Elohim and Yahweh Elohim, we are invited to consider both aspects of God's character in our own lives. God is both transcendent and personal. He is the sovereign ruler of the universe, and he is also the loving Father who cares for us deeply. Both sides of God's nature are important for us to understand. We need the awe-inspiring God of Genesis 1 to remind us of the greatness of his power, but we also need the personal God of Genesis 2 to remind us of his love and tenderness. And just as Elohim speaks creation into being, and Yahweh Elohim forms humanity with his own hands, we are called to reflect both aspects of God's nature in our lives. We are called to be both caretakers of creation, exercising dominion over the earth, and lovers of one another, reflecting the intimacy and care that God has shown us. We are to live in awe of God's power, yet also to live in intimacy with him, walking with him as Adam did in the garden. As we think about the names of God, we are reminded of the invitation he gives us to be in relationship with him. We are not merely subjects of a distant ruler, but beloved children of a personal and loving Father. And as we reflect on both Genesis 1 and 2, we are reminded that God's plan for humanity is one of both grandeur and intimacy. He has created us for a purpose, to reflect his image, to live in harmony with the world, and to walk in loving relationship with him and one another. In the end, these two creation accounts, and the names for God in them, reveal to us that God is both powerful and personal, majestic and intimate. He is the creator of the universe, but he is also the God who is with us in the dirt, the God who walks with us in the garden of life. And it is in understanding both sides of his nature that we come to see the fullness of his love and the depth of his care for us. Let us embrace both the greatness and the intimacy of God and seek to reflect both in our own lives. Two traditions of creation, P source versus J source. When we dive into the two creation accounts in Genesis, there's an intriguing layer of complexity that emerges, a layer that can only be fully understood by looking at the sources behind these stories. Scholars refer to these as the P source, priestly source, and the J source, Yahwist source. These two traditions offer different views on God's nature, humanity's role, and the very fabric of creation itself. The P source, which is primarily associated with Genesis 1, presents a creation story that is structured, formal, and orderly. It's a cosmic account where God, referred to as Elohim, speaks the universe into existence. Everything is created in a precise sequence. Light is separated from darkness, the waters are divided, land is formed, and living creatures are created to fill the earth and the sky. Humanity is created last, on the sixth day, and is made in God's image, male and female together. This account speaks of God's absolute transcendence and divine sovereignty over all creation. Elohim is powerful, impersonal, and commands from a distance. The universe is like a perfectly ordered temple, a place where God reigns supreme with complete authority. In stark contrast, the J source, which underlies Genesis 2, gives us a very different portrayal of God and creation. Here, God is called Yahweh Elohim, a name that signifies God's personal, covenantal relationship with his people. Unlike the distant Elohim of Genesis 1, Yahweh Elohim is hands-on and deeply involved in the act of creation. God forms Adam from the dust, breathes life into him, and places him in the Garden of Eden to tend to it. This account focuses on the personal, relational aspect of God, emphasizing his desire for closeness with humanity. Yahweh Elohim walks in the garden, communicates directly with Adam, and is actively involved in shaping the world around him. It's a stark contrast to the impersonal, cosmic creator of Genesis 1. The fact that these two accounts are woven together in the same book is not a mistake. Rather, it is a profound testament to the richness of the biblical narrative. The P source emphasizes divine order, power, and authority, while the J source brings forward God's love, intimacy, and involvement with his creation. These two accounts together reveal the fullness of who God is, both sovereign creator and loving father. For us, the modern readers, these different creation stories challenge us to think about our relationship with God in two important ways. First, the P source invites us to stand in awe of God's vast, uncontainable power. It reminds us that he is the creator of the universe, and he has formed everything according to his will. God's order and structure in the universe reflect his divine plan and purpose for all of creation. Yet, the J source invites us to draw closer to God, to see him not just as the creator of the universe, but also as the Father who walks beside us, who shapes us with his hands, and who desires an intimate relationship with us. These two accounts together show that God is both above us and with us, and both aspects are essential to fully understanding his nature and our place in his world. The gender issue in both creation stories. One of the most striking differences between the two creation stories lies in their portrayal of gender roles. In Genesis 1, man and woman are created together on the same day, both in the image of God. Male and female, he created them. Genesis 1:27. This account is often seen as a statement of gender equality. Both men and women are equally created in God's image, and both share in the responsibility of caring for the earth and reflecting God's glory. This portrayal is powerful and progressive for its time, as it establishes both genders as equally valued and purposeful in the divine order of creation. But then, in Genesis 2, we encounter a different narrative. Adam is created first, from the dust of the earth. And then, when God sees that it is not good for him to be alone, Eve is created from Adam's rib. In this account, the woman is created as a helper for the man, and it is clear that she was designed to meet his needs. This shift from Genesis 1's egalitarian portrayal of man and woman to Genesis 2's focus on Adam's primacy and Eve's secondary role has been the subject of much discussion and debate. It's important to understand that these two stories reflect different cultural perspectives and historical contexts. Genesis 1, with its emphasis on the equality of male and female, likely comes from a more egalitarian tradition, one that saw men and women as having equal value in God's eyes. On the other hand, Genesis 2 reflects a more patriarchal worldview, one that developed as Israelite society evolved. In this context, the creation of Eve from Adam's rib could be seen as reinforcing the social norms of the time, where women were viewed as subservient to men, created to help and support them. However, this does not mean that Genesis 2 is inferior or outdated. Rather, it's a reflection of the world and society in which it was written. The powerful truth we can draw from these two accounts is that both men and women are created by God and have a unique and essential role in his plan. In Genesis chapter 1, we see that both genders are created equal in God's image, while in Genesis 2, we are reminded that men and women were made for one another, to live in relationship and partnership. Even within the patriarchal structure of Genesis 2, there is still the underlying message that man and woman are deeply connected, made to live in mutual respect and companionship. The creation of woman from man in Genesis 2 also speaks to the intimacy and unity that God desires between the sexes. Just as Adam and Eve were united in the garden, so too are men and women called to reflect the intimate, loving relationship that God desires to have with humanity. This unity is not one of domination, but of mutual respect, support, and love. A partnership where both genders complement each other in the divine design. Both of these creation stories challenge us to rethink the roles of men and women in today's world. While Genesis 1 sets the stage for gender equality in God's eyes, Genesis 2 invites us to explore the profound interdependence between the sexes. God created us differently, but for the purpose of living in unity and reflecting His image together. These two accounts, when read together, present us with a fuller understanding of God's design for humanity, one that values and elevates both men and women, recognizing their unique gifts and callings, while also reminding us that we are called to live in loving, mutual relationship with one another. As we reflect on these profound truths, we are invited to embrace both the equality and the complementarity that God has designed for humanity. Let us celebrate the value of both genders in God's creation and recognize that both men and women, made in His image, are called to work together in fulfilling His purposes on earth. It is only in this balance of equality and partnership that we will truly reflect the beauty of God's design for humanity. The difference in the order of creation. The creation stories in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 not only present different portrayals of God, but also offer contrasting sequences for how creation unfolds. Genesis 1 provides a systematic step-by-step account where creation progresses in a logical order. Light is created first, followed by the sky, land, and plants, then animals, and finally, humans. This sequence highlights God's divine order, His control over the universe, and the meticulous care with which He crafted the world. The world is created to support humanity, and mankind is placed at the pinnacle of creation as the final step, the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan. Man and woman are created together on the sixth day, with equal status as co-regents over the earth. In stark contrast, Genesis 2 flips the order on its head. The story begins with Adam, the first human, being created before the plants and animals. The earth is initially barren, and God creates Adam from the dust, breathes life into him, and places him in the Garden of Eden. As God observes that Adam is alone, He proceeds to create the animals, only to find that none are suitable companions for Adam. It's then that God creates Eve from Adam's rib, the last act of creation in this account. Here, the focus is not on the grand scheme of the universe, but on the personal relationship between God and humanity. This divergence in the order of creation is not a mistake, but a profound invitation to look deeper into the nature of creation and humanity's role in the world. Genesis 1 emphasizes the grand narrative of creation, humanity as the climax of the cosmos, the ultimate purpose of creation being the stewardship and care of the world. Genesis 2, however, focuses on humanity's relationship with God, emphasizing intimacy and partnership, particularly between man and woman. Adam is created first, and only after that is the rest of creation formed to support him. The Garden of Eden becomes not just a place of beauty, but also a place of responsibility and relationship. This difference in the sequence of creation can teach us an important lesson about the nature of God's plan for humanity. Genesis 1 tells us that we are the climax of creation, the ultimate purpose of the universe. God made everything else to sustain us and to reflect His glory. This order teaches us about the responsibility humanity carries as caretakers of the earth and the privilege of being made in God's image. We are entrusted with the world, and it is our duty to ensure that it thrives and flourishes as God intended. However, Genesis 2 offers a more intimate, personal vision. Humanity's role is not just about being at the top of the created order, but about being in relationship with God and one another. The creation of Adam first highlights the uniqueness of humanity and its need for companionship. The sequence of creation in Genesis 2 underscores the importance of human connection, both to God and to each other. Genesis 2 reveals God's heart for relationships. It is not good for man to be alone, and so woman is created as a companion, equal and complementary. This order teaches us that our role is not merely to dominate creation, but to steward it in love, partnership, and care. The lesson in the differing orders of creation is that both the grand cosmic narrative and the personal relational story are crucial to understanding humanity's purpose in the world. We are created to honor God's greatness, but we are also created to live in deep, intimate relationship with Him and with one another. Genesis chapter 1 emphasizes our responsibility as caretakers of creation, while Genesis 2 emphasizes our need for community and love. The influence of ancient creation. Myths. As we reflect on these two creation stories, it's also essential to recognize the historical and cultural context in which they were written. Genesis did not emerge in a vacuum, but in a world where many other ancient cultures had their own creation stories. One of the most significant influences on the biblical creation accounts is the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, which predates Genesis and shares several striking similarities with the biblical narratives. In the Enuma Elish, the god Marduk defeats the chaos monster Tiamat and uses her body to form the world. The image of chaos giving way to order is central to both Genesis 1 and the Enuma Elish. In Genesis 1, we see a similar theme of ordering chaos. The world is formless and void, and God speaks order into existence. The darkness over the deep waters and the primordial chaos that God brings into order in Genesis 1 is not unique to the Bible. This idea of creation emerging from chaos was prevalent in many ancient cultures. However, the distinctive difference in the biblical account lies in the monotheistic nature of God. In Genesis, one God creates the world. Unlike the polytheistic struggles between multiple gods, in the Enuma Elish, God in Genesis is not just a part of creation, but the sovereign creator who calls everything into existence by his will. Another ancient myth with a notable resemblance is the Epic of Atrahasis, an Akkadian creation story where gods create humans from clay to serve the gods and relieve them from the burdens of labor. In Genesis 2, we see a similar image of God creating Adam from the dust. But rather than creating humanity to serve him, God in the Bible creates humans to share in his creation, to tend the garden and live in fellowship with him. What is particularly fascinating about Genesis is that while it shares themes with ancient creation myths, it takes these familiar ideas and reworks them to reflect a new understanding of God and humanity's role. The creation stories in Genesis, unlike those in surrounding cultures, emphasize the goodness of creation and the intimacy of the relationship between God and his people. In the Babylonian myths, gods often create humanity for their own benefit, to relieve them of work. But in Genesis, humanity is created for the good of creation, to care for it, to work it, and to share in God's creative work. This reworking of ancient creation myths reflects the Israelites' unique theology. Genesis teaches that God is not like the gods of the surrounding nations. He is not a God who needs to rest or who is frustrated by the burdens of creation. Genesis reveals a God who is not distant but deeply involved in his creation and who desires to share his work with humanity. The creation stories in Genesis affirm that the world is good, that humanity is part of that goodness, and that humanity's role is to serve God by serving creation. The influence of ancient creation myths serves as a reminder that the Bible is not written in isolation. It speaks into a world filled with other beliefs and narratives. Yet the Bible's creation accounts stand apart in their affirmation of one God's sovereign power and the inherent goodness of creation. The uniqueness of the biblical creation narrative does not reject the myths of surrounding cultures, but reinterprets them to offer a fresh, life-giving understanding of who God is and who we are in relation to him. As we reflect on this, we are invited to consider how ancient stories continue to influence our understanding of the world. Just as the ancient Israelites reworked creation myths to reveal God's heart for humanity, we too are invited to reframe the stories of our lives in light of God's love and purpose. God's creation is not just for us to observe, but for us to participate in, to cultivate, and to nurture. In the same way, we are not created for the burdens of life to weigh us down, but to work alongside God in bringing about order, beauty, and harmony in the world. In the end, the creation stories of Genesis challenge us to see the world through the lens of God's love and purpose, to understand that we are made for relationship, made for work, and made for the good of creation. Let this be a reminder that as we engage with the world around us, we are reflecting the image of a God who created with intention, with love, and with a purpose that transcends chaos. As we reflect on the profound truths we've explored today, it's clear that the Bible is not just a collection of ancient texts. It's a living, breathing revelation of God's nature and his relationship with us. The two creation accounts in Genesis, with all their differences and complexities, are not contradictions. They are windows into a deeper understanding of God and humanity. They teach us that God is both transcendent and personal, powerful and tender, a creator who stands above all and yet walks beside us in the garden. These two stories invite us to embrace both aspects of God's nature, his vast, uncontrollable power and his intimate, loving presence. When we look at Genesis chapter 1, we see the awe-inspiring majesty of God, a God who speaks the universe into existence with a single word. We are reminded of the order and purpose with which the universe was created, a perfect reflection of God's plan. But then, when we turn to Genesis 2, we are welcomed into a world where God isn't just a distant creator. He's right there with us, molding humanity from the dust of the earth, breathing life into us, and forming relationships that reflect his own heart. Genesis chapter 2 speaks of the deep intimacy that God desires with his creation, showing us a Father who desires closeness, a Father who does not just create, but walks alongside his children, guiding them through the garden of life. These stories go beyond just the physical creation of the world. They speak to the purpose and meaning of our lives. We are not here by accident. We are created in the image of God, designed to reflect his glory and to work alongside him in the stewardship of creation. But we are also created for relationship, to love and be loved, to care for one another and for the world around us. God didn't just create the world for us to observe. He created it for us to live in harmony with him, with each other, and with the earth. We are called to be caretakers, stewards, and partners in God's divine work. And in doing so, we reflect his love, his power, and his creativity in the world. As you take these truths to heart, remember the power of these creation stories, to remind us of who we are in God's eyes, of how deeply we are loved, and of the purposeful design behind our lives. These stories give us a new lens through which to view our world, a world that, though imperfect, is full of beauty, purpose, and the fingerprints of our Creator. I truly believe that the message we've uncovered today has the power to transform not only how we view God, but how we view ourselves. It calls us to a higher purpose, to live out the image of God in the world, and to walk with him in deep relationship, just as he walked with Adam and Eve in the garden. These two accounts in Genesis invite us to embrace the fullness of God's character and to see the world with both awe and intimacy, with a deep sense of responsibility and a heart full of love. If you felt the impact of these words, if something within you has stirred as we've uncovered the depths of these creation accounts, I invite you to share that energy with us. If this video has brought light to your soul, or if it has helped you find clarity in the midst of your struggles, then I would love for you to support this journey. Every like, every share, every comment brings us closer to spreading God's word further and deeper. Your support is not just a click, it's an encouragement, a sign that we're walking this path together. I hope these teachings inspire you, comfort you, and guide you. And if you feel led, feel free to show your support in a way that feels right for you. Every bit of energy you put into this is a gift, and it's priceless. Thank you, from the depths of my heart, for being a part of this community, for walking alongside us in this shared journey of faith and discovery. May these messages bring peace to your heart, light to your path, and a deeper understanding of the love and purpose God has for your life. As we continue to explore the mysteries of God's Word, remember that we are not just here to witness His creation, but to actively participate in His ongoing story. Thank you for being here with us today, and for being open to the light of His truth. May you always feel His presence, His love, and His guidance in every step you take.